So the block is going to come right underneath the back of the pelvis, supported bridge to start. Feet on the mat, knees bent, and let's feel the sacrum, the back of the pelvis, right in between the cheeks on the block, some part of your shoulder blades touching the ground, and the back of the skull. And if you need something under the neck, if the chin is really lifting up toward the ceiling to find a more neutral neck, you can always do that. And let's just take a breath here with the hands on the ribs. Inhale, feel the rib cage expand all directions, front, side, and back. Fully exhaling. So we'll take a couple 360 breaths, maintaining the sacrum on the block. Maintaining that contact of the shoulder blades on the ground. We'll get started with a little bit of hip flexion work here. So feel that sacrum stay on the ground. Keep the sacrum as you alternate picking up one foot at a time. The knee will stay bent. So we're going to do our hip flexion march. Right away, we're starting to work the muscles around the glutes and the pelvis, waking up the front of the hip around the hip flexor, but already having a little bit of that activation in the glutes to keep the pelvis steady. That's one of the jobs of the glutes, is to stabilize the pelvis. You can add a little resistance by maybe bringing opposite hand to thigh. You can even try to do same arm as leg if that feels better. But if you're adding this, I'm just doing an extra little resistance here, making the hip flexors have to work a little bit harder, which means the glutes have to work a little bit harder to stabilize the pelvis. One more. Both feet come down. Let's wake up those glutes even more, lifting off the block. Move the block aside and just slowly lower down one vertebra at a time. Let's come back to that triple S and lift up into a bridge without the block. So push down into the feet, use your glutes to lift the hips, staying low in your bridge. Feel those two pelvic points at the front draw in. Holding here, we're going to keep that contact of the big toe, but let's abduct the hips, working the outer hips, the glute medius. Let the knees flap out and then back up toward the ceiling, flap out and back up toward the ceiling. And as you do this very, very tiny flap, nothing changes in the pelvis or the low back, and nothing changes with the feet. So I'm not just flapping with that with no control and the feet flop open. I'm keeping the feet the same. So don't just roll to your big toe or pinky toe side. Keep the glutes really working to stabilize the pelvis and abduct the hip. Pause and bridge with the knees up, regular bridge. Let's stretch out that left wrist, left palm up, pull back into that wrist extension stretch. Long through the low back. Maintain contact with the big toes to keep the glutes nice and awake. Switch hands, right palm up, we'll stretch it out. Breathing into the ribs. Hands come down. Let's lower down using the glutes, eccentrically lengthening, lower with control. Once we get that sacrum down, you can do a little wiggle or shake of the pelvis, let those glutes relax a little bit, and we'll interlace the hands behind the head, elbows up toward the ceiling or in tight toward the forehead. Take a big breath into the ribs without arching the back or lifting it away from the ground. As you exhale, feel those front ribs pull in toward the body. Let's lift off the shoulder blades without rounding the back. So it's a tiny lift. We're keeping the elbows in, the chin slightly toward the throat. Inhale to lower down. Big breath into the ribs. Exhale, feel the ribs pull down. Lift just enough that you get off the shoulder blade. So it's not the same as a big crunch where we round the back. We're keeping the spine pretty neutral. Inhale to lower. Let's add on. Exhale, lift up. Feel those lower ribs kind of knit in or close off a little bit as you lift up. Now keep the pelvic bowl the same. Pick up that left foot, knee over the hip, hip flexion. Any amount, let's externally rotate the hip one time. Bring it back to neutral, step it down. Inhale and lower. Exhale, feel those front ribs close in or knit in a little bit as you lift off the shoulder blades. Pelvis stays still, low back stays still as we pick up the right foot. Externally rotate the hip, bring it back, step it down. Inhale and lower. Breathe into the ribs. Exhale, lift up. Knit the ribs in. Stay long through the back of the neck. Pick up the left foot. Externally rotate. Maybe we tap it across like a figure four. Uncross or unwind. Step it down. Inhale, lower. Exhale, lift. Long through the back of the neck. Don't round the back. Hold the low back long. Pick up the right foot. Externally rotate. Maybe we tap it across. Add a little figure four. Uncross or unwind. Step it down. Inhale, lower. One more with an optional add-on. Exhale, lift. Knit those ribs in. Draw the pelvic points in. Left foot lifts. Externally rotate. Maybe we cross it over. Maybe we lift the right heel. Maybe we hover that whole right foot up into a figure four. Right foot or heel comes down. Uncross the left foot. Inhale, lower down with control. One more. Exhale, lift. Knit the ribs in. Draw the pelvic points in, long in the back of the neck. Right foot picks up. We externally rotate. Maybe we cross. Maybe we lift left heel. Maybe we hover. Keep pulling the belly down. Lower the left heel or foot. Uncross the right foot. Inhale and lower down. Take a big breath in and out. We're going to head to quadruped. Grab that block. It's going to come to the sacrum at the back of the pelvis. Little stability here. Knees in nice and tight toward the hands for quadruped. Now make sure that the front of the throat is lifting up. You can always just look forward and then keep the head at that height and bring the chin slightly toward the throat so the neck gets a little bit longer. Keep lifting the ribs in. We're going to slide the left toes back. Now feel the belly lift up toward the block as you float the left toes. Did anything change in terms of the strength or stability of that right hip? Do we just kind of pop over to the right? Really engage that right glute medius, right outer hip. Left knee bends. We're going to extend the hip. Main job of the glute med is to extend this left hip right now. So let's really think left glute, tiny little pulses. So these might be so much smaller than you think if you've done this exercise before. I really want you to keep the pelvis from arching or tipping, so no movement in the belly or the spine. We're really working the core, stabilizing here, and then left knee comes in, recheck, long through the back of the neck, ribs are lifting, belly is lifting. Right toes back. Now before we hover the right toes, make sure that left outer hip is ready to stabilize as we float the toes, and then bend that right knee. We're really thinking right glute. Tiny little pulses here. Maybe we're thinking about the right hamstring or back of the leg lifting up toward the ceiling. Maybe we're thinking about that right heel or the bottom of the foot lifting up toward the ceiling. But the movement is not coming from the low back or the upper back. It's just that right hip and glute, extending the hip. Good. Lower down. Remove the block. Let's take a little child's pose or puppy pose. If you want to try internally rotating the hips with knees in, feet apart, you're welcome to do that. Keep the ribs lifted if you're in a child's pose so that we don't sink the chest down. Breathe all around the ribs. Good. Bring it forward for cat-cow. You could be on fists. You could do whatever you want with your hands. Now let's start to mobilize the spine. Inhale as we extend the spine, lifting the chest. Exhale, rounding the spine as we tuck the tailbone. Maybe let the head release. Any pace that feels good. Heading into a down dog. Let's come onto the hands. Spread those fingers. Now really maintain pressure into the fingertips, the knuckles, not just the wrist as we lift up. So we're staying active in the arms. Really light up the triceps by pressing into that second finger. Lift the hip creases, lift the ribs up here so that we're not trying to sink the chest down to the ground. We're actually trying to lift the ribs away from the ground. If you want to pedal the feet out, you can. That feels nice to stretch out the calves or the heels or get into that plantar fascia a little bit more. Hands walk back toward the feet. Huge bend in the knees. Happy squat. This is triple flexion of the ankles, knees, and hips. Long through the spine. Let's use the glutes to get up. Push the ground away as you rise up. Hands are going to cup around the sides of the pelvis. We're going to do our hip abduction walks forward. So keep the knees soft. Any pace, we're going to pick up one foot. This is hip abduction. It goes out to the side. Nothing lifts. The pelvis stays level. So it's going to be super low to the ground. We're working the outer hip and glute again. So this is glute medius, abducting the hip, and then other glutes are working to stabilize the pelvis. So keep it low. All right, when you get to the front, let's start with our sun salutations. Knees soft, arms reach forward and up. Lift shoulder blades way up. Exhale, hinge. The glutes are helping us eccentrically lower with control. Right foot steps back, lower the knee, and the top of the foot, we're in our 90-90. Lift up, ears over the shoulders, ribs over the pelvis. Little nudge of that right glute forward to really stretch the front of that right hip. Left hand to the sacrum, right arm up. Get the armpit even closer to your ear by reaching the pinky up, 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 keeping the ribs in and keeping that nudge of the right glute forward. Keep this upward lift and we'll add a tiny side bend over to the left. Keep the ribs in, keep the pelvis level. Good, lift up, hands come down, quadruped, tuck the toes, long through the spine, hover the knees, lift the belly, lift the ribs, lift into down dog. Take a breath, your knees are soft, fingers are pressing into the ground. On an exhale, we're gonna lower the knees, using the core to control the descent. Right foot steps forward, left knee stays down, we're gonna untuck those left toes, 90-90. Picture that broom behind you, right hand to the sacrum, left arm up. Get the armpit up toward the ear by reaching that left pinky up, 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 up. Keep nudging that left glute forward, and we'll take a little bit of a side bend, just arcing the ribs up and over to the right, but keep that feeling of zippering up a wetsuit. Lift it back up, hands come forward or to a block. We're gonna step the left foot forward to meet the right, bent knee forward fold. Push the ground away, use your glutes to get up, rise up. Shoulder blades lift. Hinge, big bend in the knees, long through the spine. Use your glutes to lower. Left foot steps back. Lower the knee, but not the toes. We're gonna lift up. 90-90, toes tucked. Ears over the shoulders, ribs over the pelvis. Knuckles together. We're gonna keep that activity in the left glutes. A little push forward there. Exhale, turn just the ribs to the right. And then bring it back. Exhale, just the ribs turn right. And bring it back. So keep going. The pelvis is not turning with it. That left glute is really helping to stabilize the left side of the pelvis so it doesn't turn when the ribs turn. Bring it back, hands down, quadruped. Long spine, tuck the toes, hover the knees without rounding the back. Lift to down dog. Knees stay soft, heels stay lifted, active in the arms. Lower the knees using the core to control this descent. Left foot steps forward. Right toes are going to stay tucked. We're in our 90-90. Right glute's got a little squeeze to it. Knuckles together. Ribs in. Turn the ribs to the left without turning the pelvis. Bring it back. Exhale, rotate left. Long in the spine. Long through the back of the neck. Keep that gentle push of that right glute forward. Bring it back, hands come down or to the block. Right foot steps forward to meet the left, bent knee forward fold, reach the arms up. We're gonna start our sequence. Exhale, hinge, big bend in the knees. We're folding in half at the hips, not by rounding the back. Right foot steps back, lower the knee, not the toes. We're in 90-90 again. Firmness in that right glute. Hands come to triple S, skull and sacrum. Keep the ribs in. Let's use the glutes to eccentrically hinge. Torso comes toward the left thigh. We're not rounding the back to get down. We're picturing that broom behind us and then push the ground away with that left foot. Lift back up. So we hinge. We're eccentrically lengthening or working that left glute on the way forward and then concentrically contracting it on the way back up. So we're using both glutes, front and back, in different ways on the way down and on the way up. Pause in your hinge, lift the ribs, lift the belly. We're using the core to hold the spine neutral against gravity. Hands come down, three-legged quadruped. Left leg back, block to the sacrum. Let's lift the belly, lift the ribs. Stay really solid in this outer right hip so we can float the left toes, bend the knee. This time instead of glute pulses, let's externally and internally rotate the hip. So we did this on our back in our core work. The pelvis does not rotate, the back does not rotate. We just feel this movement from the top of that right thigh bone. Keep the arms straight and strong. Good, let's step our left foot forward. Let's move the block. Left foot steps forward. We're gonna lift off our right knee all the way to the side of the mat. Externally rotate the hips, coming into our squat. Now let's feel the glutes here, holding the pelvis stable. And we're just gonna pulse. You could have hands cupping the sides of the pelvis, triple S, maybe at your ribs, but really make contact with the full feet, especially the big toes. So this is a little bit more focused on glute max, the biggest glute, because our hips are externally rotated. Now we're gonna turn to the back of the mat, shorten the stance into our kickstand hinge. So it's like a very short high lunge. Our right foot is forward, left foot is back. I'll angle myself this way. Same hinge we just did in low lunge. Weight shifts into that front foot, so it should be the right foot. Spine stays long, and we're just gonna hinge slowly, eccentrically working that right glute. Push into that right big toe to get back up. Concentrically contracting the glute. So we hinge. We're getting longer, but working the back of the glute, back of the hip, and then lift back up. So this might be the tiniest little hinge. It does not matter how far you go. I want you to stop as soon as you feel like your back is doing the movement for you. So we're really trying to keep this hinge in the hips and the glutes, not by trying to round the back to get lower. One more. Now let's lift and turn back to the left toward the side of the mat. We're going to do some eccentric side lunges. Slowly side lunge left. So again, we're eccentrically working the back of the hip and glute, and then lift back up. Now let's slow, sit back into that right hip, long through the spine, and then push away. So eccentric, we're getting the back of the hip on the way down, and then concentric, push the ground away to get back up. Using the glutes on the way down in our hinge, and then on the way back up. Any pace, but try to go slower on the way down, and then push back up a little bit quicker and feel that the glutes are doing that without tucking the tailbone under on the way up. So maintaining that neutral. And from here, we're just going to turn to the front. Let's do that on the second side. Knees soft, arms up. Get the shoulder blades up toward the ear by reaching up through the pinkies. Hinge, using that eccentric length of the glutes. Left foot back. Lower the knee, but not the toes. We're lifting into our 90-90. Hands to triple S. Let's hinge. Same thing we just practiced. You might be feeling the right glute already a little bit. Maintain that triple S. So just like we practiced, it does not need to go very far. We want to stop as soon as we feel like the back is what's moving us and not the hip. Stay long through the back of the neck. And then feel that left glute help you on the way up. Hold your hinge forward. Get a little longer through the spine. Lift the ribs. Hands come down, three-legged quadruped. Right leg back, block to the sacrum. Let's find neutral here. Bend the right knee. Stay really engaged in that left outer hip as we externally and internally rotate the right hip. So as we're doing this movement, the right hip does not get higher than the left, hopefully. We want to balance that block, draw those two pelvic points in, and then zipper up the front of the body. Take your right foot, step it forward. You can move the block. Your right foot steps forward. We lift off the left knee, turn left. Externally rotate the hips. Find that position where it feels like a broom behind your back would touch your triple S. And let's pulse as slowly as you want. Maintain contact with the feet, especially the big toes. Good, you're gonna turn to the back of the mat. And now your left foot should be forward in that kickstand hinge. So knees are soft, I'm off that right heel. Let's shift more weight forward into the left foot. Hinge any amount, getting that length at the back of the left hip and glute, and then push the ground away with that left big toe to get back up. Using the glute on the way down, and then using the glute to get you back up. Stay long through the spine. Don't worry about how far you go. Make sure you're feeling the glute do this job. Really sitting back into that left hip. Good, let's lift, turn to the right, to the side of the mat. We're gonna side lunge right, sit back slowly with control, use the core, and then push the ground away. Sit back slowly into the left hip. Push the ground away. Any pace, stay long through the spine. So we're really working the glutes, working that descent into our side lunge with control. So we don't want to feel like we're pinching or clicking in the hips. If you do, bring your fingers to those hip creases and then talk to me. Send me an email. All right, we're going to turn back to the front of the mat. One round of sun salé. Soft in the knees, long through the spine, arms up. Get the shoulder blades and the armpits way up, but keep the ribs from popping. Use those glutes to eccentrically hinge without collapsing. Step it back for plank. Knees can be up or down in your plank. Let's really feel the back of the neck is long, chest is open, ribs are lifted. Lower the knees. Let's recheck triple S. Lower down, tops of the shoulders are going to stay lifted as long as you can. Untuck the toes. Now let's use the glutes here. Cobra is a back bend. So feel the glutes kick on. It might feel like tucking the tailbone under a touch. Drag the hands back, lifting the sternum, but imagine your belly trying to lift off the mat as you keep that engagement in the glutes. So low back is long. Tuck the toes, lift into down dog, or you can take a child's pose. We'll walk the feet forward for down dog to shorten the stance, lift the heels, super big bend in the knees so we feel buoyant in the feet, really strong in the arms. Let's walk it forward, bend knee forward fold, push the ground away, and let's rise up. All right, we're gonna stream that. So we're gonna add just a touch more challenge if you're up to it. Soft through the knees, arms reach up. Shoulder blades up. Now let's hinge, long through the spine. Right foot back. Lower the knee, not the toes. Let's lift up, 90-90. Check that alignment, active in that right glute, triple S. Hinge, slow. Now you can stay here in your hinge. You can add a heel lift with that left heel. Lower, and then use the glute to lift back up. So that's our add-on here if you want. You can stick with just hinging forward, lifting up, or you can hinge. Try to lift that left heel any amount, and then lift it back up. So you are going to feel that in the left hamstring a little bit more, maybe a lot more if you're taking that option. So we're just getting into that posterior chain a little bit more, helping the glutes get a little bit more active. We're going to pause in our hinge, reach a little longer through the crown of the head. Hands come down, three-legged quadruped, left leg back. Block on the sacrum for that pelvic stability. Secure in this right hip, so we're not just going to sink over into that right outer hip. Bend the left knee. Back to those glute pulses. Tiny little pulse here, like we're trying to lift the left heel up, maybe the left hamstring or back of the leg up. Give that left glute a little squeeze each time. Keep the front body from changing, so really feel the whole front body try to lift up. Remove the block. We're going to step that left foot forward, lift off the right knee, turn to the right. We're facing the side of the mat, externally rotate the hips. Now we're going to squat and pulse here, hands wherever you need them. Feel that engagement in the glutes, really active in the hips. We're not sinking down. Now, if you want, you can add an alternating heel lift while you pulse, pushing into those big toes. You could try both heel lifts. You could try, of course, some plyo, work on landing softly. Use the glutes to absorb the shock. All right, let's turn to the back for that kickstand hinge. Right foot is forward, knees are soft, pelvis is level. Hinge, really pushing into that right big toe, and then lift up. Hinge, lift back up. If you want, you can grab a block in your left hand. Right hand can come to the sacrum or to the ribs, wherever you need. And just having that extra feedback of holding the block in the left hand is just going to give you a little bit more awareness as you hinge. So notice if you're really rounding the back, maintain neutral in the spine. So the goal is not to get down low. The goal is to use the glutes to do this. We want to get into the habit of using the glutes to get us down to the ground, not the low back. Good, now let's turn to the left, back to the side of the mat. Here we're gonna add on to our side lunges. Let's side lunge left. Now push off and step the left foot next to the right. Take that left foot behind you, little curtsy squat, and then feet together. Left foot steps back out to the left. Side lunge slow. Step together. Left foot behind, curtsy squat. So we're only doing this one side in the stream. We're just side lunging left, bringing it together, curtsy squat. All right, so of course, if you're feeling super steady here, you can skip the tap. Go right from your curtsy squat to that left side lunge. But again, we want to maintain that feeling of a broom behind your back and really feeling the glutes do the job here. They're doing so many of these movements for us. Let's side lunge left and pause. Feel the ribs lift up. If you want, you can walk your hands kind of toward that right foot. You can take a block over to the right. Get a nice QL stretch for that left side as you stretch the right inner thigh, or just hold in a side lunge. Breathe into the ribs. All right, let's unwind back to the front. And we'll step the feet together. Second side of the stream. Arms up. Get those shoulder blades up, reach the pinkies. Hinge using the hips and the glutes to get down. Left foot back. Lower the knee. Not the toes, 90-90. Hands to your triple S. Hinge. Stay with the hinge or add that right heel lift and then lift back up. Just an option. You do not have to take it. Feel what we've been working on, moving with that triple S. So you can move as slowly as you need to move mindfully. Let's pause in our hinge. Long through the back of the neck. Hands come down, three-legged quadruped, block on the sacrum. Our right leg will come back. We're gonna bend that right knee. Stay solid in that left hip. Let's pulse here. Using that right glute and hamstring, hip extension here. And that left glute is working, the left glute medius, the outer hip is working to hold that left side of the hip and pelvis still. Holding the pelvis still, so part of the core. Take that right foot, we're gonna step it forward, just move the block. Right foot steps forward, we lift off the left knee, turn left. We're facing the side of the mat. Externally rotate the hips, let's pulse. Maybe we add a heel lift. Maybe we add both heels. Option two, of course, add plyo. Landing softly, your choice. Good, we're gonna turn to the back for that kickstand hinge. So as we turn to the back, our left foot is in front. Shorten the stance as much as you need. If you wanna grab a block in the right hand. Use the left hand wherever you need it. Focusing on your form. Hinging forward. So using that left glute to hinge. And then using that left glute to lift us back up. So use your hands wherever you need. Hands on the body is so good for the brain. Okay, let's turn right. We're back to facing the side of the mat. This time we're only side lunging right. Slow eccentric side lunge into that right hip. Step the right foot next to the left. Right foot comes behind, curtsy squat, any size. Step together. Slowly step that right foot out. Sit back into that right hip. Push the ground away, step the right foot in. Curtsy squat and step. Any pace. You can skip the taps. You can go right from your slow eccentric side lunge into your curtsy. Whatever you want, pelvis stays level. Side lunge to the right, and let's pause here. Hold, you can just stay long. You can lower the hands to blocks. You could walk your blocks over toward that left foot as you keep sitting back into that right hip. Lifting the ribs if that's what you're doing. We're gonna turn it back to the front, quadruped. And let's do a little cat-cow or belly roll here. Okay, this is a little different than figure four. We're gonna do a hip stretch, but instead of externally rotating the hip, we're just gonna focus on stretching the back of the glute. So let's take our right knee and try to cross it behind the left any amount. You could also have your hands elevated on blocks if that's helpful. Now, if you're already feeling a stretch in the hip, any hip at all, totally fine, stay here. If you want to start to slowly rock it back without swiveling the pelvis side to side, so that's kind of the tricky part, is learning how to sit back without just swiveling the hips to one side. So you might want to be rocking back. You might want to just lower down, maybe onto your forearms, breathe here, maybe we rock here. So whatever it looks like is fine. But breathe into the ribs. Let's make sure we're not tensing the jaw, holding the breath or anything. And then uncross and we'll switch. Left knee crosses behind, whatever that looks like. If you're already feeling a stretch, just breathe here. If you want to add those kind of slow, gentle rocks back, you could do that. You could lower onto your forearms if that's what you feel like you need to do or want to do. Just keep that expansive breath all around the ribs. Stay long through the spine. And then we'll uncross and come onto our backs. Now we will do a little quick figure 4. Cross that right foot over. So now that right hip is externally rotated. We can stretch the outer hip muscles a little bit more. Anything you want with the arms or the feet. You can rock side to side. Let's try to relax the forehead. Feel that triple S as much as you can. That's the back of your skull, shoulder blades and sacrum. Switching sides, pick up the left foot, cross it over. Any figure 4 that you'd like, keeping the ribs from popping. Try to keep the neck long. Let's release that. You're welcome to hug the knees in or take any extra movements that might feel nice. And we'll end in whatever position feels comfortable. You can lie on your back, or you can transition back into a seated position. Hands resting at your sides or maybe somewhere on your body. Feel that length through the spine. Soften your forehead. Relax your jaw, especially if you notice the top and bottom teeth touching. With each exhale, see if you can let go of any tension in the body. And we'll take a moment to thank ourselves for this time to practice today, to move our body, and to, of course, strengthen those glutes. You can stay here as long as you'd like, or go ahead and finish up by sending one grateful thought out into the universe.